So with the trailer for Brand New Day coming out recently, there's been a lot of talk about whether Peter Parker is going to become a mutant or not. One of the most prevalent plots we've had since we've started getting spoilers for this movie is that mutants are gonna be involved in some way.
You know how long I've been waiting for this? Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
Is Sadie Sink gonna play Jean Grey or Anna Marie? I don't know. But there's an extreme possibility. Seeing that the Hand, who is usually a Daredevil villain and Elektra's little gang that she hangs out with, was in the trailer, I think might be the Thieves Guild, because the Thieves Guild is a prevalent plot in Marvel Rivals right now because they have just added Gambit, but also Marvel tends to have synergy with these projects where something happening in one of them usually happens in the movies or shows. So it's not crazy to think that it's the Thieves Guild. And that means it's not so crazy to think that mutants are going to be involved in this project. It's also been heavily implied that Jamil Tillman of Severance fame, he was Mr. Milchick in it if you've watched it, if not, please do. He might be playing William Metzger, who is a known anti-mutant propagandist within the comics. He only has one little, story that he's in, but that's who that character is. Does having this name mean he's going to be this guy with a anti-mutant platform? Not necessarily, because that's not how Marvel works. The MCU has done a lot of stuff with giving people other names, like the TVA, if you remember in Loki season 2. Ouroboros was given the name Arthur Douglas, which is Drax's human name from Guardians of the Galaxy, not in Guardians of the Galaxy, but that is his human name before he becomes Drax. And it's also implied that the Dawn name that Mobius is given is a nod to Donald Blake, which is Thor's alias on Earth, but also the guy that Odin made so Thor can have a body on... It's a whole thing. That's a whole different video. If you've gotten this far in my ranting, welcome back. I'm Stella. I am a cosplayer and pop culture and beauty and etc. content creator, and I love Marvel stuff, so I love talking about whatever I'm reading right now. And right now, I'm reading through a lot of X-Men stuff. So that's where this idea for this came from, because I saw the Spider-Man trailer just like everybody else, and I thought, wow, mutants. But also, is Spider-Man gonna be a mutant? So let's talk about that, because that's what this video is about. So is Spider-Man a mutant? There's been a lot of people who are mutants and no longer mutants in the comics, and there's also people who just turned into mutants recently, like Cloak and Dagger, Franklin Richards, Wanda, and Pietro. They were all mutants who have now since not become mutants anymore. They're not classified as mutants. But at one point, they were mutants, and I do think that Pietro and Wanda should still be mutants if their dad is, but you know, that's a thing. But Kamala Khan, Mrs. Marvel, was actually just made a mutant in 2023, and it was before the MCU show came out, but they had always planned to make her a mutant, so it kind of just ended up lining up at the right time, so she's a mutant now. So let's talk about what makes somebody a mutant, and what makes a inhuman, and what makes a mutate, which is not a mutant, a mutate. In a world full of superpowered individuals, there's a lot of ways to acquire superpowers. A tragic accident, a serum, radioactivity. The list of ways to naturally acquire these powers is endless. And yes, I put naturally in quotes because it's a whole thing and you'll see why. Mutants are known as Homo superior and were created when the Celestials traveled to Earth and altered the genetic structures of certain human beings. The genetics of these humans were passed on from one generation to another but remained dormant in the mutant gene. As such, even if somebody had non-mutant parents, a person can still possess mutant abilities due to the dormant mutant gene. This gene is called the X gene, and it can awaken during a traumatic event or puberty, or if you're Emma Frost, both, depending on the telling. But I'm sure we'll see her start leaning into more of that Genosha attack causing her second mutation storyline in the future of Marvel as more synergy kind of starts to align. And some mutants actually exhibit their mutation at birth. While Gambit didn't have his powers, he did have his eyes, and somebody like Nightcrawler has always looked like the blue fuzzy elf we know and love. While others don't actually get their powers until adulthood or puberty or a traumatic accident. But what about Inhumans? These humans were experimented on by Kree a long time ago. As such, Inhumans were created as a subspecies of human with different abilities unique to specific Inhumans. However, while mutants awaken their powers naturally as they age, those with Inhuman genetics can only awaken their powers through the process of pterogenesis, which is a rite of passage which requires an Inhuman to get exposed to a Terrigen mist. So this leaves every other superpowered individual within the Marvel Universe under the mutate category, including Spider-Man. A mutate is a being who acquired a physical characteristic through exposure to one or more mutagenic agents, such as chemicals or radiation. AKA, they were superheroes who were not born with the capabilities in their genes to develop superpowers. And mutates are typically characters that have been somehow genetically mutated in order to attain their superhuman abilities. For example, by exposure to magic, radiation, or toxic waste, or through a spider bite from a genetically mutated spider, etc., etc. And some examples of known mutates would be Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, Daredevil, who got his power from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle accident. If you don't know that, he got the same radioactive waste spill that ended up creating the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It is the same accident in New York that is like a canon Marvel thing. Electro, Peter Parker, Miles Morales are also all mutates. All of the Fantastic Four are mutates. Beast is surprising to me, but he is also considered a mutate, even though he hangs out with the X-Men. Red Hulk, Hulk, and She-Hulk are all considered mutates, and Captain America, Mantis, and Deadpool are also considered mutates. So why is Deadpool so often considered a mutant by fans? When he is actually categorized as a mutate, it makes sense. He's always hanging out with the X-Men after all. Then if Deadpool is considered a mutant, then why isn't Spider-Man even in his man-spider form? Well, the confusion actually comes from where Deadpool got his powers from. His powers at face value actually do make him a mutate. He was experimented on by the X facility, but because where they got the stuff to experiment on him with, it kind of blurs the line on if he is a mutant or a mutate. They actually ended up using Wolverine's power to use that to then make Deadpool. So if his powers come from the X gene, does that make him a mutant? And that's where the gray area comes from, because he gets his powers from a mutant, but he himself does not have the X gene to produce that naturally. So it's a gray area, but by definition, he is not a mutant. So will Spider-Man Brand New Day make Peter Parker a mutant just to follow this mutant subplot? After all, we've had people go in and out of mutant status like Franklin Richards and Wanda and Pietro, and now we have Kamala Khan becoming a mutant. So it is not outside the realm of possibilities that we will start seeing a world where Peter Parker is known as a mutant, especially if they make this his mutation like Emma Frost has a second mutation, he has powers, and then he's mutating on top of it. It kind of makes sense if you're willing to play in that playground. Do I think the average Marvel fan will care? No. Do I think die-hard Spider-Man fans will care? Absolutely. So what I think it boils down to is that Marvel might be actually making him mutate, like a mutate does, but not a mutant, to kind of hold the hand of the audience to kind of figure out the biases that people have towards mutants, because there is an extreme bias towards people who naturally have the ability to get their powers through the X gene, and there are the people who have serums and radioactivity and spider bites. So if you have somebody who has a spider bite like Peter, then mutating but not being a mutant, it leads the audience, it takes them by the hand and shows them that this is what mutants face in the everyday lives of a mutant, because they do struggle with prejudices because of where their powers come from. So if Sadie Sink is, say, being Jean Grey, we might see the obvious in your face, like what a mutant faces versus what Spider-Man faces, becoming a mutant or a mutate. So why not have the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man take you by the hand and show you that struggle from a viewpoint that is a little friendlier? And if they go with the man-spider plot that was in the 90s cartoons, which, by the way, my dad said is his least favorite run, and I thought that was interesting. So I'm interested to see how people like that think about this movie, because I'm always up for anything for the most part, so we'll see. But I am sure we will see Spider-Man reaching out to not only Bruce Banner, but many other experts in their field for help on figuring out if this transformation he's going through is based on his radiation from the spider bite getting out of hand, or if he's actually mutating in a way that a mutant would. After all, in the show, he does go to Professor X and the X-Men for help to try to find a cure for this mutation, but they can't help him because it's not a mutation in a mutant sense. Ultimately, he does get this all sorted thanks to the help of Punisher, Kraven the Hunter, and Dr. Crawford, but he does have to keep going to Dr. Kirk Connors every 24 hours to prevent the mutation from reoccurring. So we have the Punisher in this movie, and we have Bruce Banner filling in for Kirk Connors, aka the Lizard, so we will just have to see who is the last piece of the puzzle in this whole thing. We do have Kraven the Hunter in a Sony movie. You maybe didn't see it, but he does exist in the Sony Spider-Man universe. But again, that's even if they're going with this plot at all. So what do I think will happen in Brand New Day? Do I really think they're gonna shatter the Spider-Man lore and end up making him a mutant for the rest of time? Because if something happens in the MCU, it surely happens in the comics. The rest of time is being very lenient. It would probably only be until they decide to change it like they do with other characters. And the answer to that is no, not really. I don't think they're going to do that. Am I curious about it? Because I think the idea of Earth 199, not Earth 616, it is Earth 1999, Spider-Man becoming a mutant is insanely interesting as a storytelling device, especially if they do have an anti-mutant clash in the movie. Yes, but I don't think that's going to end with him purely being a mutant, if that makes sense. I do just think that at the end of the day, it's going to be a narrative device to actually explain mutants versus mutates and establish that before we enter the X-Men saga, which will be in Doomsday, because we get a couple of the X-Men in that, and then going forward if they make X-Men movies and such. Because some people didn't watch the animated show, and some people haven't read the comics, so this will be some people's first experience with mutants in general. So it will be laying the groundwork for something that maybe a lot of us already know, but a lot of people might not know. But all in all, I do think Mutant Spider-Man would be very cool, especially if we do it in the way that it's just kind of like Deadpool, where we just kind of accept it sometimes. People come and go in mutanthood, and they're always welcome within the X-Men when they are mutants, so I don't think it'll be too big of a problem. But I hope that this answered some of your questions about mutants versus mutates within the Marvel Universe, and if you have any questions about the Spider-Man movie in general, like if you want to talk about the Thieves Guild versus the Hands in the comments, I will gladly talk about that. Be sure to give a like and comment and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Be sure to stay safe out there, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Also, I never plug it because I just feel like about plugging stuff, but I do have a Patreon where I do like show cosplay stuff I'm working on, or I do have a Discord that you can join through there, and it's just a good time. We like to talk, and I'll hopefully get back to doing like movie nights and stuff because I used to do that during the pandemic, and I miss it, and I miss you guys. But if that sounds interesting to you, the link is in the description down below. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.